Okay, we should be recording now. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Derek Smith, and I'm a career strategist with Academic Advising and Career Center. And today we are looking at exploring management pathways featuring finance. So I appreciate everybody making it in. So let's talk about the way the night's going to work and how things are going. So the way the night's going to basically work is I'm going to do a quick PowerPoint just introducing our panelists and who they are. And then we're going to jump into the night with some Q&As. I have some pre-prepared questions for all of our panelists. Once we've had a chance to go through all the questions, we'll also do an open Q&A for all of you students who are joining us here to go ahead and ask your particular questions. So the chat is open. So if you wish, you can go ahead and ask questions throughout the night in the chat. However, we will be answering the questions at the end of our time. Now, if someone wishes, one of the panelists wishes to type in their answer, that's fine as well. But we'll be saving our questions to the end of the night to go through all of them, just so we get a chance to cover the formal part of the questions and go from there. So what's going on here? What's happening with upcoming events? So I do want to tell you about some upcoming events that you may be very interested in. Now, this is mostly for the senior level students, those who are graduating or entering senior year, although we've had some students who are in younger years come and join this as well. We have what's called our Get Hired conference coming up. So let me go ahead and I want to show you what Get Hired is actually all about. You may recognize this particular person. That would be me presenting. So our Get Hired conference is a 3-day conference that'll be running from April 27th through 29th, 2021. And it's designed to help you get prepared for what's happening out there. So this is off the ANCC website, and we do encourage you to check it out. It's intensive job search training, but we're also going to do 3 separate networking events, including with recruiters. So that's an upcoming event you do want to check out. Again, it's through the Academic Advising and Career Center. You do definitely want to take a look at that. Registration will be opening the first week of April. So who am I actually, the one you just saw on the website there? So my name is Derek Smith, and again, from the Academic Advising and Career Center. And you may or may not know this, but you have a career center. It's true. It's amazing how many students actually don't know that they get career services. Now, this is outside of those who are in co-op with your co-op coordinators. This is actual dedicated career services for all UTSC students, and it's particularly management. So I am known as the management career strategist. Before the lockdown, I was actually embedded in management 2 days a week, helping students with career services. So what are the career services that are available to you right now? We're doing one-to-one appointments. All appointments are currently being done virtually, either through phone or through Teams. Eventually, we will get back into person, which would be great. But what are the services that you can have with your one-to-ones? Well, we're looking at resume teaching and critiquing. Probably the #1 service we provide is resume teaching and critiquing. And I would say about 90% of the resumes I look at will need some form of modification. So we help you with that. Any form of job search help, especially in this world of COVID, how to find a job is so important. So we help you with how to find work. Interview preparedness and mock interviews. I have been so busy with doing interview preparation. I have probably done in the past 6 weeks about a dozen or more mock interviews. So mock interviewing is where we actually interview you like the employer. So if there's a job coming up, you can send us a job posting, we'll interview you. But if you need help with how to do an interview, again, we help you with that one-to-one. Any kind of career exploration. So, we're learning about finance today, but if you're not sure, is finance good for you? Are there other types of fields you might be interested in? We're actually one of our panelists today was, originally in accounting, I believe, and has gone to finance. So sometimes you do shift over. So if you're not sure about direction, you can book a career counseling appointment. LinkedIn critiquing and profile critiquing. So LinkedIn, especially during COVID, I've been reading articles, and one recruiter put it this way, that if you do not have a LinkedIn account, you currently don't exist. That's what one recruiter said when I was reading their article on job search during COVID. So you need an absolute LinkedIn account. How successful is LinkedIn? In our last session we did last week with the IT double degree panelists, one of our panelists has his current full-time job for being headhunted off his LinkedIn account, which basically means that he was found by a recruiter. Myself, and please don't tell anybody this, I've been headhunted twice so far this year. That's people basically reaching out to me saying they found my profile on LinkedIn and they want to talk about a career. Obviously, I said no, but it's effective. So LinkedIn is extremely important, and any kind of career strategic questions you might have. So the phone number and email address is right there on this slide. please take advantage of the career services available to you. It's there to help you out, and especially during this time, any help you can get will be very beneficial for you. Okay, we have some panelists. You'll get to know them a little bit more in detail. I'm going to read a bit of a bio for them, but we have 4 alumni that are joining us, and we're very happy that they've done that today. So Marina, Sashir, Timothy, and James are all joining us. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about their backgrounds and what they're all about, and we'll get to know them a little bit more in a few moments. So Marina just recently graduated from UTSC August 2020. So she's very new in the field, and guess what? She got a job. We'll find out more about how she did that in a few moments. Her co-op experiences were primarily in the finance field. She was a financial analyst at Sick Kids in the Research, Awards, and Financial Services Department, as well as an operations analyst in the Global Middle Office at Scotiabank. She also attended the university, I hope I'm saying this right, Mannheim? I'm not sure if I said that correctly, in Germany for study exchange during her time at UTSC. And she's currently working full-time at Scotiabank in FX settlements and clearing. So welcome to Marina. Sashir, he's the Vice President of Portfolio Management team and works primarily on the Prime Canadian Property Fund. His responsibilities include portfolio analytics, forecasting, reporting, investor communications, and assisting the portfolio managers in overall fund administration. He takes the lead in preparing responses for his RFPs and due diligence questionnaires alongside supporting new product development and efforts as well. He joined Bentel Gren Oak in 2017. And before joining there, he worked with Connor Clark and Lunn as a senior analyst for 4 years in Investment Analytics Group. Prior to this, he worked at TD Asset Management and a variety of portfolio roles. He earned his CFA and the Chartered Alternative Investments Analyst, the CAIA designation, and holds a Bachelor's of Business Administration degree from U of T. He is a past board member of the Vancouver chapter of Room to Read, and is leading not-for-profit focused on girls' education and children's literacy in Asia and Africa. So welcome this year. Timothy, he is also a U of T co-op alum. He started his career in accounting and transitioned into finance. So it'll be interesting to hear about that transition and how that went in 2008. For the last 10 years, he's been helping global investment managers trade their foreign exchange through their stints in the CIBC Capital Markets and BMO Capital Markets. Finally, James, he graduated and one of the inaugural individuals from the MIB program. He completed his master's in international finance and development from the School of Oriental African Studies at the University of London. His experience varies across multiple types of organizations, from MNSCs, public sector organizations, non-level NGOs, social enterprises, and international agencies, and across multiple continents, including Europe, Africa, and Asia. His focus over the past few years have been on international economic development, prioritizing financial inclusion, digital finance, developing countries, inclusive market development, economic empowerment, and social enterprises. So welcome to our 4 panelists. So tonight we are going to talk about finance, and what its basic level is the acquisition of management and financial resources. It is an integral part of individual lives, households, businesses, and government. So we're going to find out this wide range of what finance covers. Now, finance has many different types of positions you can get into, and these are some sample ones. We got financial business analysts, consultants, account representatives, investment bankers, project coordinators, financial auditors, budget officers, financial planners, and many, many more. So we're going to find out a lot more tonight, a lot about what finance is all about. So welcome to our panelists. So for all the students who have joined us here, once again, the way we're going to run this is I'm going to be doing a kind of a circle form of Q&A with our panelists. So I'll be asking the same question to all of them, and we'll rotate who is speaking. The chat is open for all your questions. So please feel free to drop any questions in that chat right there. Now, we will be answering all the questions at the end, however. I don't want to be stopping and starting, asking questions. However, if any of our panelists feel they want to go ahead and type an answer in there, that's great during the process, but please feel free to type in your questions throughout the process. And again, we'll take care of those at the end. So welcome, everybody. Okay, so hello, everybody. Hello, panelists. Nice to see everybody here. Thanks for joining us. So what I'm going to be doing again is I'll start off with a question, and we'll go in circles. So our first question is going to be, now, although I just did a quick bio on you, let's find out a little bit more about you. So as the first question, can you please take a moment to talk a little bit about more of yourself? What was it you studied at UTSC? And a brief experience of your employment and your current company that you work for. Now we'll get more into your daily lives in the second question, so you don't have to worry about too much in your daily lives right now, but just a little bit about who you are, what you studied, and what you are currently doing. So James, you're the closest one I see to me. Can you go ahead and get started?
Sure. Thanks, Derek. Welcome, everybody. So my name is James. I am a UTSC alumni. I graduated from the Management and International Business program back in 2016. Yeah, back then it was a brand new program, so I was kind of part of the first cohort that went through it, and it was really good experience in terms of getting international exposure. It included work terms abroad and study abroad. So got to work in Hong Kong and study abroad in Singapore. Since then, actually, my career path has been a little bit all over the place, and I do a lot of different things. So actually, I'm not a pure finance person like some of the other panelists on this call, but there are a lot of my job aspects that revolve around finance. So since UTSC, I shifted gear from working in like corporate sector to focus more on development. So I ended up working for an NGO in financial management in Western Africa. So I was working there for about a year, about eight months to a year, and then came back to Canada and started working for the Ontario public sector in corporate planning and performance measures and I don't know, corporate strategy as well. So, and then since then, after that, I kind of wanted to do further education. So I ended up doing my master's in London on international finance and development, which was also a little bit more macroeconomics and economic development. From there, I started focusing more on financial inclusion. I did some research in India on microfinance institutions, women's empowerment. That's kind of where my focus has shifted towards, more on access to finance. And since then, since I guess about a year and a half ago, I've been working for a UN agency based in Myanmar called UN Capital Development Fund, and they do a lot of financial access or financial inclusion, working with local banks, digital finance, working with the governments on financial inclusion roadmaps. We do a lot of lending to microfinance institutions, SMEs, and a lot of capacity building when it comes to market development. So I've been there for about a year and a half. It's technically based in Myanmar in Southeast Asia, but I've been stuck in Toronto for about the past years. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, and I guess we'll go on to details later on.
Great, thanks, James. Appreciate that. Marina, I see you next. Can you talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I actually joined UTSC in 2015, and I joined in the pre-management program, which I'm not sure if that program still exists. But yeah, so I eventually got into the co-op and finance program. And one of my favorite courses was Mr. Howard's course, communication course, which I feel like it's a very practical course. It helps you for the outside world as well. So that was one of my highlighted courses at UTSC. But yeah, my main experiences would be at Sick Kids as a financial analyst, as Derek kind of gave you guys an introduction of already. And I also interned at Scotiabank for 4 months, and then I decided to extend that to 8 months. And that's how I kind of landed my full-time role when I graduated. And then another cool thing I did was going abroad. I studied abroad in the University of Mannheim in Germany. And that I literally did that right before the pandemic hit. So I got super lucky there as well. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you so much. Sashir, I see you next on my panel there. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
For sure. Thanks, Derek. Thanks for the opportunity, obviously, to have us here. And very interesting to hear both of James and Marina's backgrounds as well. It's super fascinating. So in my case, I think I'm one of the older alumni here, relatively speaking. I graduated from UTSC in 2008. I started in the BBA program in 2005. And similarly, similar to Marina, I think I started in the non-co-op program and then joined the co-op program in my second year. But I finished up through the co-op terms at the end of the 4 years. So it was a BBA co-op. I specialized in finance throughout in the last couple of years that I was at UTSC. And I think Derek has briefly summarized my work experience already. I started my first job out of school was at TD Asset Management. And I already had one internship with them when I was in school still, which was in their investment banking side. But I graduated and joined their investment management side, so TD Asset Management. So I was with them for a couple of years in Toronto before I moved to Vancouver. I spent about 4 years at a firm called Connor Clark and Lunn in Vancouver. And then now I'm at a company called Bentall Green Oak, which is still in investment management, but specializes in commercial real estate. So I'm in the portfolio management side of things for Bentall Green Oak. So I've been here for about 4 years now. So quick roundup.
All right, thank you so much. And Timothy, tell us about yourself a little bit there.
Hi everyone. Similar to Shashir, I graduated from UTSC not recently, but not that long ago. 2010. Started off in accounting, similar to I'm sure most first years where, first year I thought I'd be, Big Four auditor, CA for life type thing. Then I realized after my first co-op, which was I was at RBC as a junior accountant, that I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing. And so I applied to almost every job in the co-op board that was there, everything from marketing all the way down to corporate strategy. And I stumbled upon finance by accident, to be perfectly honest. I applied to some job at a pension plan, Ontario Teachers, thinking, okay, it's a bookkeeping role. And I thought, there'd be a lot of transferable skills from my accounting co-op. And little did I know it was for the trading desk at the pension plan. And for whatever reason, they hired me, and 12 years later, still doing it. So therefore, after that, I spent a lot of my co-ops doing trading desk jobs from CIBC all the way to going back to Ontario Teachers, doing equities and foreign exchange. When I graduated, I joined CIBC in their foreign exchange team. Was there for about 8 years before I got poached and recruited away by BMO Capital Markets. And for the last 10 years, since graduating from UTSC, I've been helping global investment managers analyze, trade, and execute their foreign exchange risks. So instead of, say, trading stocks where you're looking at the balance sheet and income statements of companies, my team, we essentially look at global macroeconomic trends. So instead of trading stocks on companies, we're trading currencies of different countries. And 10 years doing that, and hope to do it for another 10 plus.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so now that we've gotten to know you a little bit, let's find out more about what you're currently doing. So can you talk a little bit more, please, about what your current job is, but more the day-to-day. So what are you doing day in and day out? What does it look like? What are your goals, functions, things along those lines? So Marina, let's start with you this time. Talk to us about what your job is like.
Sure. So currently at Scotiabank, I'm actually in a rotation program, which means every 8 months, I will be transferring within different departments within GWO, which is Global Wholesale Operations. So for my first 8 months, I was placed in foreign exchange settlements and clearing. And a day-to-day of what I mainly do, so one of my main tasks, obviously we have morning cutoff times. So Euro cutoff time is 10 a.m. and GBP cutoff time is 11 a.m. So we have to get all of our payments for value date today out by that time. So mornings are pretty busy for our team. So we are usually dealing with a lot of SWIFT payments. So that can be either from web clients or incoming wires or branches, even clients that would like to net throughout the day. Those are the trades that I mainly deal with. Aside from that, I'm also helping clients with exercising any drawdowns that they have for final time options, as well as fixings. And a lot of my other time is also spent doing like special requests for clients. A lot of our clients do like to net their trades, so they'll have a bunch of trades that they'd like to have. Sometimes they want to net through across different value dates, so I have to either put a debit manual in through for that or a credit manual. I know I'm getting very like into it, but mostly that's what we do. But we are looking into getting more STP, which is like a straight through process where there's less manual work for our side and there's more of like quick system process for a lot of these trades. So for most of the part, that's what I do all day.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, so you're part of a new grad program, you were saying there, right? Like a rotational. And for those of you who are soon to be graduating students or thinking about it next year, apply to these programs. They are fantastic programs. Basically, you get hired on to get trained and trained in how to do these jobs. And as Marina was saying, it's a rotational period where every few months you're trying a different job out. So basically, you got one of these professional financial firms or a bank who's taking you on. They pay you and train you. Yeah. So and when those roles usually come out in the fall. So for those who are going to be going their senior year next year, definitely start applying to those and come and see myself or any of my colleagues for help on the resume because as Marina could probably tell you, very competitive to get into these types of programs. They look for top end students. So fantastic programs and congratulations on getting that, especially during 2020. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Sashir, tell us about your day a little bit. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's similar. I'll just reemphasize on your point, Derek. So even like Marina, my first job at TD Asset Management was a rotational program as well. And as you said, they're super competitive, but very, very valuable because you get a very good perspective. I was in a 2-year rotation program with TD Asset Management, and you really like it's one thing to understand what a group does or a team does from the outside, and completely another to actually be in the group and working for them for 4 months. So it's really valuable to not get pigeonholed too early on in your career. So it's a very good way to understand what you like and also what you don't like. I think more importantly, what you don't like. So that's a good one, definitely to keep an eye out for. Currently, as I mentioned, my role revolves around portfolio management for our company's pooled funds, as they're called. So essentially, they're investment funds. Most people are familiar with mutual funds, which are for retail investors. These are essentially similar vehicles, but only for institutions, not for you and I, but for large pension funds to invest money in. So any CPP, for example, Canada Pension Plan, when they want to go out and invest in commercial real estate, they may do it themselves, or they may choose to hire Bentel Green Oak because we specialize in investing in commercial real estate. So we have more than 65 billion in assets under management just in that asset class. So a lot of pension funds, especially the smaller ones, who want exposure to that asset class, but don't have the expertise to do it in-house, would invest in the funds that we manage. So on a day-to-day basis within our team, I would be responsible for things like a lot of the portfolio analytical functions. How is the fund performing? Why is it performing the way it is? How is it performing relative to the benchmark, the performance attribution, a lot of the stuff you hear in finance courses. I'm the portfolio manager for one of the funds, which is about $200 million in AUM. It's a smaller sub fund. So, on a day-to-day basis, I monitor the allocations of that fund. And also generally we do a lot of forecasting. So, fund inflows, outflows over the next 3 to 5 years, strategically, where do those funds get allocated in terms of, accounting for the economic trends, basically. If you, obviously, as you may have seen, for example, retail malls are closed at the moment because of COVID. And that has a big impact directly on the portfolios we manage because we hold some of those properties in our real estate portfolios. So then how does that, implication flow down and impact your future allocation? So those kind of decisions are what we're involved in day to day. And it's interesting because, one aspect about real estate, it's very physical. So you can say, oh yeah, that's the building, you know, in downtown Vancouver or in downtown Toronto that we own in our portfolio. It's not just a stock in a portfolio that you have no other link to, you know. So that's the interesting part of what I do.
Very good. Thank you so much. Timothy, how's your day? What's it look like?
My day normally starts around 6:30, 6:45, and usually first thing I do is I'm on the phone with our trading teams in London and Hong Kong just to figure out, you know, what moved in the market and why and by how much. Because by the time 7 a.m., 8 a.m. hits, our clients already trading, and so by then, you know, it's too late to kind of, you know, figuring out what's going on in the world. And the client segment that my team trades for is institutional investors. So it could be anywhere from, you know, small local pension plans to larger global mutual fund companies and hedge funds and central banks. And you know, it gets really busy around from 9 a.m. to 12 because in my market, foreign exchange, most of the liquidity happens during the overlap with the European centers. And, you know, after lunchtime, where we eat at our desk, given just the nature of the job, we, for the bulk of the afternoon is, you know, you're catching up with clients that you may have had a chance to talk with during the morning. And, you know, the clients can range between the traders at these investment management companies all the way to the portfolio managers and the CIO level, where, you know, you're discussing anything from, you know, trade strategy, investment ideas, you know, broad market themes, and even, you know, over time, you become friends with these people, and you talk about, you engage with them on a more personal level. And kind of the good thing about foreign exchange is, you know, my day finishes relatively early compared to other areas of the bank where I'm signed off by 5:01 p.m. every day, and that's only because of the fact that we have teams in, you know, Hong Kong and Sydney, Australia, that kind of, you know, their day's already starting. So it's a global nature of our business, and that's I guess the one caveat that I want to highlight. You know, Derek touched upon this earlier, is the recruitment cycle. It's crazy how the last couple of years, you know, I'm not really involved in recruitment anymore, but then just from my friends in the business that are still very much on the recruitment committees, it's getting earlier and earlier. For example, when I was a co-op, December, January was when recruitment happened for internships. Now offers are done and interviews are all completed by late September, early October. So you really need to be kind of on the ball and ahead. But anyway, that's a short day in the life of me.
Great, thank you. And James, let's find out about what your life looks like on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Thanks, Derek and everyone. I think my answer is going to be a little bit different. I'm actually not in the typical finance atmosphere as some of my panelists here. So I don't really do any trading. I don't really spend a lot of time looking at markets or doing some of the portfolio management because my area of finance is a little bit more ground level. It's working more with rural communities and finding barriers to finance for a lot of vulnerable societies in developing countries. Actually,
James, to be honest, that's way more interesting than what was.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's also a little bit challenging. I mean, ever since I've been working remotely, I guess if you want to really know about my day, I work both like evenings and daytime because I have a 11.5 time difference to deal with. So I'm generally starting my evenings around like 9-10 in the evening for meetings, and I stay up till, I don't know, like last night I was up till about 3 a.m. Just with meetings, dealing with different projects, and then I kind of wake up and I do my work during the Toronto day at my own pace to get ready for meetings at night, which is just kind of the nature of the job. But in terms of, and I'll keep my answers to finance related because there's a lot of different things that we do. But in terms of finance related activities, we do a lot of like macroeconomic stuff, working with central bank, working with Ministry of Finance to find projects and ways to implement different ways to improve access to finance. So that includes working with the banks, working with financial institutions, trying to figure out how to what are those barriers and how do we get out there? And a big market segment that we work with is microfinance institutions, because they're the ones in the rural communities where banks don't go and deal with the rural clients. So what we do, one element of my job is similar to Nashir was saying, was we also have a fund that we manage where we lend out as a UN agency to different microfinance institutions. It can be anything. It can be also like SMEs or small businesses or any type of institution. But in Myanmar, we've been lending a lot to microfinance institutions, and that's something that I've been managing over the past year. So it's trying to identify potential investors that we could look at, doing some due diligence, working with our headquarters in New York to help them build business plans. So it's not just finding them, but it's helping them acquire the skills and building capacity to actually learn how to apply for investment, whether it's through debt or equity financing. So we help them build business plans and forecasting. We give them some training on those elements. And then a lot of times it's their first time getting a loan or getting some sort of investment. So we walk them through what the process of applying for, or what a loan contract really is, what are those details, what are those covenants, and then the process of actually getting that approval through the regulatory office and all those different things. We also take them through like a investment committee, and we have an external investment committee that reviews these loans that we put forward, and they approve all that. So that's one element of it. We also deal with a lot of investors that want to invest within Myanmar in terms of other potential MFIs or small businesses or challenge funds that we do, where we try to scope out different organizations that have like small businesses that have potential to grow. And we work with, development banks and DFIs, development financial institutions, to come up with like loan guarantees or different types of innovative financing opportunities where you can bridge kind of public funding with private funding, which is just a really important thing nowadays. But the past month and a half has been really tough. Myanmar is going through a military coup, so it's really put a standstill on a lot of investment, which we don't really know what's going to happen. A lot of the investment that's being targeted to Myanmar is now going towards Cambodia, Vietnam. Even for us as an organization, where it's too risky to lend out to a lot of institutions, and dealing with the military powers is not something that we're allowed to do. So right now we're in a little bit of limbo, but I guess that's just kind of the challenges of working in development sector and working in these kinds of volatile markets.
Wow. Well, thank you for that story. It's it's good to hear a variance on how the industry can be done in different areas. So that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, next question then is going to be, what got you interested in this industry? How did you make this decision? A few of you said that you kind of shifted a little bit from one area to the other. So let's hear what led you to finance. Let's start with Sashir.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. I think in my case, I've always been a bit of a investment geek right from the beginning. So even while I was at UTSC, we were either participating in stock competitions or organizing them through Mesa and things like that. So I was always a bit of a geek already on that front. So I think it wasn't too much of a difficult decision for me, because I've always had that interest. And my main thing was, what do I not want to do? And in my case, that was accounting. The very last accounting course I took was cost accounting in my second year of school. That's it. No more accounting courses after that. So it was mostly finance, and I liked it. I excelled at it. So that's what drove me to it. And then I think another big thing that reinforces the decision is the work terms that I took on during my schooling years. So through co-op, I had 3 different work terms. 2 of them were at the same place that Tim mentioned, at Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, and 1 was at TD Securities in investment banking. So if you're ever unsure about whether this is the right field for you, go and work in it, and that's the best way to figure out whether it is for you or not. And really, the internships is one of the best ways to get that exposure, because you have no long-term commitment. obviously you want to put in your everything for the 4 months that you're there, but if you're not enjoying it, hey, it's only 4 months. So it's not that big of a deal, and you really get a good bird's eye perspective of what it's like to be in that field. So, give it a fair chance. Don't judge too early, but once you've had maybe 1 or 2 internships, that's typically enough for you to tell whether you want to be in it or not. So definitely, even if you're not in the co-op program, there's many ways to get internships out there on your own. I'm sure that's something Derek can guide you folks on. But that's sort of how I got into it, and I've sort of stuck to it because I still enjoy it.
Well, thank you, appreciate that. Timothy, what got you into finance?
To be honest, really by mistake. Thought I was applying to an accounting job, then ended up being a trading job. What kind of kept me in finance though is, this really sounds cliche, but every day is different. And I'll give you guys an example where every day is different because there's a new global event or market mover that's driving asset prices globally in stock markets, equity markets, and bond markets. And it's kind of our job on the bank side to help our clients navigate the global economic landscape. And so, as we know, the front page of every news paper is different every day, and that's what kind of keeps things interesting. Other areas of finance where projects and tasks might stretch out over days, weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years. In terms of the trades and the projects in my world, span minutes. Sometimes it might span hours. So, I'll be looking and working on one thing, and I'd be lucky if I was working the same thing by lunchtime. If I'm working on the same thing a few hours later, it's a big problem. And so it's a spontaneity of things that kind of kept me in finance. And I guess to try and tackle the question a bit more direct, when I told people I want to try and get into finance, what kind of prompted me to kind of keep digging was I forget, someone at told me, oh, you'll never make it. The numbers are too high. There's a couple 100 or 1,000 applicants per job. And I was like, well, I want to prove that person wrong. And here we are. Wow, it's like 10, 15 years later.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Timothy. James, what led you to finance?
Yeah, I don't really know, actually. I just kind of ended up here. And I wouldn't really consider myself a finance person. And actually, a lot of finance that I do deal with is more project finance. So, managing projects and analysis, financial analysis from a project standpoint. But I guess my industry, or how the kind of the environment that I got involved with or got interested in, really kind of came towards the end of my university, maybe late third year, fourth year. I've always really been interested in global markets, international events, global development, economic development, whatever you want to call it. And so I think towards the end of my third year, and in fourth year, like, Derek, you were mentioning all those recruitment programs, and I applied to all of them. Like, it was ridiculous. And you go through so many rounds of interviews, and at the end of the day, I didn't get anything. And I was like, you know what? I don't really know what I'm going to do. And the reason I actually applied to those rotational programs, like you mentioned before, is that you got to try everything. And for me, I wasn't really like, my degree, it wasn't, I'm a finance, it wasn't accounting, it was international business. And that's kind of like a general thing. So I was like, these rotational programs would be a good opportunity to try a little bit of everything, see what I like, see what I don't like, where I end up, and whatever. But I didn't get any of those. And actually, I was okay with it. But what happened at the end, I started to realize that I wanted to work in development, work with financial institutions, microfinance, and this idea of financial access. So what I started doing was I just applied for a lot of different internships, different programs through different agencies that focused on developing countries and emerging markets. So I came across one of those, and actually what happened, I think it was like after I graduated in fourth year, it was like in the summer. Actually, one of those rotational programs did lead me to a job offer, but like 8 months later, because they found my name as part of the rotational program, and they didn't pick me then, but because I was in their system, they called me for other interviews and all that. So they did offer me a job, but at the same point, I had an internship opportunity in West Africa that I was like, hey, you know what? This is kind of what Shahir was saying, where the only way to know whether you like something is if you try it. And for me, this idea of working in developing countries and working with finance in developing countries was just kind of an idea. And I thought, it's 8 months of my life. I'm just starting my career. I might as well do this right now rather than going and getting stuck at a corporate job for whoever knows how long. So I just kind of took that risk, and I really enjoyed it. Again, it was finance related, but it was also project finance, where I was helping an NGO that was doing everything paper-based, help them move to Excel, do Excel training. It's a little bit more hands-on, helping them develop budgets, helping them forecast. They had a social enterprise that didn't really know what they were doing in terms of cost analysis and all those things. So yeah, that was kind of the start of it. And what's kept me in this, it's kind of what Tim said, every day is different. Every project is different. Every country is different. And for me, it's also the personal satisfaction that I'm able to use my skills in an environment that doesn't necessarily have that capacity. And that was something that was very important to me starting from the beginning. So
Fantastic. Thank you. And finally, Marina, tell us about why you went into finance.
So for me, it started, I guess, kind of in high school. I took part in like a stock competition, and our team ended up I think we came like 3rd place. So I think it was since that moment I kind of realized that, okay, cool, like finances, it's cool. So I kind of looked into, that's when I applied to like finance programs, and I got into UTSC. And then at UTSC, I feel like my co-op experiences really reiterated my interest in finance. And I know this is one of like the questions that we're going to cover in a bit, but I feel like finance is just always evolving. Like now more than ever, people are realizing how important finance is. Like even if you're not in finance, you have to deal with finance. So I feel like it's such a cool industry to be in, and yeah, it's never a dull moment.
Great. Thank you for that. So let's talk about, and for some of you, this is going to be thinking way back, your first employment experience. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got your first job? What was it about? But the most, I think for our students here listening is, how did you get it? Was it through networking, resume blitzing, online? So how did you get your first job, and what was it? So Timothy, let's start with you on this one.
By accident. So my first co-op job search, I applied to over 120 jobs, only got like 30 interviews, got 0 offers. I went into second round, didn't get any jobs. I went into the next semester. I was basically like I bought all my textbooks, and I got a call from RBC saying, hey, there's someone passed us your resume. Do you want to apply for an accounting co-op? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And here we are. And having a big name in your resume definitely helps a lot for your first co-op job search. But yeah, so in terms of my first job, I was very, very grateful, but it showed you the power of networking, and kind of, you never know where the jobs are going to come from. To this day, not exactly sure who sent my resume to RBC, but eternally grateful to them. And, kind of that first job, I was accountant doing booking entries for different investment funds across the different clients of RBC. So it was very clerical and kind of bookkeeping in nature. But with that, I got a little bit of flavor of finance, because even though I wasn't really in a central finance role, I was kind of helping with the support role. And kind of when the team I was working with there, it was a lot of new graduates, and there was a bunch of people that were studying for their MBAs. And I asked them, well, what's an MBA? Why are you doing it? And like, well, we're trying to use it to transition from accounting over to finance. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm still in school. Maybe I can transition while I'm still in school. And kind of that's how I got about my first job. And it was kind of also the way I kind of got sparked into finance. And also because that first job was actually during 2008. So not the best time to be transitioning into finance, but here we are 12 years later.
Well, thank you for that. James, tell us about how you got your first job and what it was about.
Sure. My first job was also my first co-op term, actually. And it is not really what I do right now. I won't say that because I think every job is somewhat related. There's something in any job that you'll pick up and take somewhere else. But what I was doing was working for Sanofi Pasteur, which is a pharmaceutical vaccine company, which now I feel like I should have stayed there because it's kind of the place to be right now. No, I was working in like marketing and commercial operations. And actually, marketing was never something I was really interested in. It wasn't something I was interested in. Never thought about applying for any co-op job that was related to marketing. But the reason I applied was, well, we had the MIB coordinator came from Sanofi Pasteur, and she was telling me about the organization, and also she put me in touch with the co-op student that had that position, and it was an 8-month position. And I remember I was like, I'm not really sure if I want to go into marketing. Should I apply? And it was an 8-month term. So I was like, if I apply, then I'm like, and I don't like it, I'm kind of stuck there for 8 months and I don't know what to do. But talking to the previous co-op student that was there changed my decision, just because he talked about, it's not just marketing. You deal with so many different departments within the organization. You're dealing with regulatory affairs, you're dealing with medical affairs, because whenever you're putting up promotional material, you have to really, especially when it comes to medical promotional material, you have to take into consideration so much scientific knowledge, so much like legal requirements and regulatory requirements. And the other cool thing he told me, well, he told me that the manager was nice, but also that I was the only co-op student in that department. And for me, that was always a good thing. I didn't care if I really had friends working there, but I realized that if I was the only co-op student there, then I could really present myself and show myself, and I would get most of the responsibility. So that was a good thing because they gave me the opportunity to really like try different things. They gave me the opportunity to lead projects. They gave me the opportunity to present with different key account managers. And the 8 months really went by quickly. And I think, yeah, it definitely led to other opportunities down the road. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Thank you. So we've had 2 individuals so far who didn't exactly start straight where they kind of ended up now. So we'll get more to that in a little bit. Marina, talk a little bit about your first job, or even what you're doing right now, how you got it.
So it took me a while to get my first job as well. So I applied to like a million jobs, it feels like, and I only got a few interviews. And my first interview actually I got just because I went to a networking breakfast and I added one of the recruiters on LinkedIn. So further to your point of how important LinkedIn is, especially I guess now because of COVID, but even back then during my first co-op term, it was very important to have LinkedIn. I ended up getting 3 interviews during my first seeking period, and I ended up with 6 kids just because the role was financial analyst and it aligned more with what I was interested in. But once I actually did enter like that work environment, I realized it wasn't really for me. It was definitely more accounting, which it wasn't really my kind of vibe. And the work environment was also very it wasn't like a bank. It was very quiet, very not kind of what I'm used to now. But it was definitely good to get my foot in the door that way, just to have that experience on my resume and just to be able to talk about what it's like to work in a corporate job. And it was also, since it was my first corporate position ever, it was good to see how a system is organized, like what kind of platforms they use and whatnot. And then my second position was at Scotiabank, which I started in January 2019. And initially it was a 4-month term, but I loved it at Scotiabank and I thought that I would extend my term for 8 months. And that's when I got put into the summer internship program that they had. And basically it was filled with workshops, but a bunch of lunch and learns. We had a bunch of lunches with like VPs, directors of different departments, and we got a little glimpse of what they did. We also had a team project. It was called like a paperless initiative. So we had to come up with a way to save paper for the entire bank. And at the end of the 4 months, we have to present to the global head our presentation of what we did for our department, like any process improvements we did, and how we basically impacted that section of the bank. And within those presentations, they chose like the top, I want to say like 5 students, and then they would offer them a role when they graduate, like a full-time position. So I was one of those lucky applicants. And yeah, that's my story.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for your story. So sure, what about yourself? Tell us about that first job and how you got it.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff has been covered by the other panelists, but in my case, my first job experience was through the co-op program, which was an internship at Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, and I was part of their performance. I'm forgetting the exact name for it, but performance evaluation team, analytics team, and that's essentially where they did a lot of number crunching for the various assets which were managed by the pension plan. And in my case, that position came about mainly through job applications. You know, I as with everybody else, I applied to a lot of the openings that come around summertime for the co-op terms. And you know, as Tim was mentioning, if you get one interview, you'll probably get more. If you're not getting any interviews, then you got to work on the earlier stages in terms of your resume. But if you're getting one interview, you'll probably get more. And don't worry about fluffing the first few, because you're going to mess them up anyway. So it's almost like, you know, you have a whole bunch of interviews. I did as well, and you improve through them, because over time there's not that many questions people can throw at you that you have not heard before the moment you go through 2 or 3 or 4 interviews, you know. So in the same way, I think it's almost better somehow if by coincidence you can schedule the ones that you really want near the end of your interview cycle. So I think that's what had happened in my case. I don't remember exactly, but once I was in the internship in the co-op work term, your main goal is just you want as much exposure as possible. Yes, you have your own job responsibilities, but try your best to seek out, you know, mentors at that company, not necessarily in your team, but even other folks who are friendly enough to want to guide you and mentor you. And there's always folks like that who want to pay it forward. And that's sort of how I secured my next 4-month term. So originally the position was meant to be a 4-month term, but after talking to people and across different teams, I was able to essentially take on more work, and it got them to extend my work term for another 4 months. So it became an 8-month internship at OTPP. And you know, so just always don't aim to keep your head down and just do your work. That shouldn't be your goal. Yes, in the beginning, that's fine, but after the first month, open up, you know, look up beyond your desk and start talking to people if possible, because that will bring you a lot more insight than just your own work. And in my case, it helped me secure the next work term. And after that, my third one was at TD Securities in investment banking. And again, to one of the points Tim mentioned earlier, in finance, there's 2 sort of main sides to the industry, buy side and sell side. And as an investment banking analyst, I was on the sell side within TD Securities, worked there for 4 months, got a taste of what it's like, realized that it's not for me. They gave me a full-time job offer at the end of it. I had to turn it down because I had decided that's not my cup of tea. But that's what helped me then, you know, apply for a full-time position at TD, except on the buy side in TD Asset Management when I graduated full-time. So naturally, they see that you've already worked in the company, so that counts for something. So you know, just some guiding points there in terms of how to sort of manage along your first few experiences.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Now, to your point about bombing interviews, one of the things we help you is to prevent that is we do mock interview practice. So definitely take advantage of that. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, you get to practice with us. I did a mock interview today. I did one yesterday. I'm doing another one tomorrow. We get to try these things out because if you've never done an interview before, oh yeah, Sasheer's right. You're not gonna usually do very good on your first one. Now, especially right now with being COVID and doing all this virtual interview stuff, we've just seen that, you know, interviewing itself is stressful, but now you got to do it to this webcam and it's got its own set of challenges. So yeah, something to definitely think about. But I did hear a lot of themes here, and I think one of the most constant themes I heard from everybody is, what they ended up doing first is not necessarily what they ended up doing, right? I mean, you tried something out, you took a chance, and didn't necessarily work out to what you wanted it to be, but it wasn't the end of the world. It taught you, right? Even those positions that weren't exactly you, quote unquote, it taught you something, and you took that. Like what James said, that all experience is good. It's gonna be translated to somehow. So I think what we can take from this last question for everybody here is, try something, just see what it goes. But another thing we heard too is it's a lot of work. How many resumes we all sent out? Like couple dozen probably. It was a lot of work getting it out there. We heard that networking is probably one of the strongest ways to find jobs. Many of you found it through whom you know. So keep that in mind for those of you out there right now, is that it's going to be work, especially right now with COVID. It's going to be determination, but it's going to definitely pay off if you keep at it. But I like what Sashir said as well, is get your head off the desk a little bit and start talking to people. Make connections, get to know people, take advantage of different events that are happening, and this will definitely be something that'll help you out. So let's look at our next question then, which is talking about the academic experience. So what I'd like you to share a little bit with us now is talk about how your academic experience helped prepare you for what you're currently doing. But let's not just focus only on classes. Obviously, you can talk about the classes that really helped you out, but let's just focus a little bit more on the things you did outside of the classroom. So were you any part of any clubs? Did you do any kind of activities, case competitions, anything such as that? So let's talk about your classes that you did for sure, but let's talk about the other academic side where you did things outside of the classroom and how that could have helped you to where you currently are. So James, let's start with you on this one. Talk about your academic experience.
Sure. Yeah, mine was pretty good. I think because I was part of the MIB program and it was the first year, it was a little bit, they were still trying to figure out what to do with the program and how to progress it, what kind of courses to take and everything. And what the consensus of the program was that you kind of take a little bit of everything, but with the global spin on it. So instead of just taking marketing, you're taking global marketing. And if you're taking strategy, you're taking international strategy or international law. And also you take a few more economic courses that focus on, international economics and international finance. So that was pretty good. But what also helped was, and I said this in the seminar a couple weeks ago, was it gave me a lot of flexibility in how I wanted to structure my courses, because I wasn't tied down to like a stream like finance or accounting, and I didn't have these like massive sets of courses that I had to take. So that actually worked in my favor. And because they were quite flexible, I was able to take a lot more economic courses, which is actually something I was more interested in. And that focused more on development economics, international finance from like an economic standpoint, macroeconomics. Money and banking was a course I took just to kind of understand how financial institutions work, how the central bank works. It all kind of played into it was kind of like progressively leading up to what I wanted to do, I guess. I had to kind of structure my degree in that sense. And then I took a lot of courses that were on the other side of campus. And I don't know, the other side of campus, for those people that haven't been to the other side of campus or didn't know the other side of campus existed, was there's like the management building, which is on one side of Ellesmere, and then there's the rest of the campus, which included like social sciences, arts, science, and all the other sciences on the other side of the building. So I took a lot of courses that were in international development studies. So that focused on, development studies, political economy. It just kind of broadened my horizons a little bit. It again gave me a taste of whether what I was actually interested in was something I was interested in. And then it led to me kind of, getting more interest, reading more books on the topic, reading more about like sustainable development and economic development, which is not something that we talk a lot about in the business degrees. And I started to realize there was a gap there and something that I wanted to bridge that gap for my own learning. So that was in the classroom. Outside of the classroom, I think, it's pretty standard. I think everyone here has been involved in some sort of clubs or some sort of activities. I was part of DECA, so I led DECA in my third year, I think, and then got involved with case competitions from the first year, second year. I was in DECA in high school as well, so it kind of like came through. And then I started participating in other case competitions. I think I did live in my last year. But I don't know. I think honestly, I think clubs they're really great. But I think everyone has been doing some clubs. I think you have to get involved with clubs to kind of broaden your horizons a little bit more. But kind of go, I guess, a little bit above that. I think clubs become a common thing after a while. I think all my panelists have been involved in clubs in some way, shape, or form. So really try to find something that sticks out more than just extracurricular activities.
And just to put one thing into perspective that James mentioned, I think when Tim and I were on campus, there was only one side to the campus.
That was I had to explain it to you guys. I didn't want to date you, but
Yep.
I think we might have paid for the other side of the campus.
The back in the day, the management building wasn't connected to any of the buildings. So you actually had to have a jacket to go to the M wing.
It's okay. We paid for the Pan Am Center and the new arts or the new building that just came up.
They got the Highland Hall one now there too. That's one of the reasons I've been implanted in management physically is because Ellesmere, no one crosses it, so they thought they'd actually stick me in the IC building to see the management students. All right, Marina, let's go to you. Let's talk about your academic experience, not only the classes and courses that have helped you, but any of the extracurriculars you might have done.
Yeah, so a lot of courses really helped my academic understanding of finance. I feel like third and fourth level courses kind of helped me a bit more just because you're specializing more into what like your field is, which is in this case finance. So courses that really helped me out were money and banking was a very good course, investments, even just like basic finance. And I remember in my last semester, like 3 of my courses, a part of my grade went to participating in a stock trading platform. So yeah, that was a good experience just to see like how like not everyone gets that kind of experience. So just to have that kind of application within your academics as well as outside of academics. Yeah, and like further to the fact of like participating outside into like clubs, and even though like I feel like you don't necessarily need to be a part of clubs, but clubs hold a lot of events. So even though maybe joining a club might be too much of a commitment for you, they hold lots of like networking events, like case competitions. So I feel like there's always a way to get involved. So and there's always a way to like meet new people and meet new friends as well as besides from in class as well as outside of class. But yeah, and one of my favorite experiences outside of academics would be my study abroad in Germany, just because I took courses like economics courses that weren't offered at UTSC. So for example, I took a course called Family Economics, which is literally the economics of a family and like a household. And you kind of learn about the input and the output of a couple if they're divorced versus if they're together. And you measure like the marginal, it was like about like the love they feel for each other versus like if that declines. It was a very interesting course, and I didn't know you could make economics out of that. So I feel like just getting that exposure was really interesting. Although it doesn't help me in my current role right now, it definitely did give me a different perspective of things. So yeah.
Can I just say it might help you in the future when you have a family though.
Never know. Okay. Sashir, tell us about your academic experience and any extracurriculars you did.
Yeah, I'll highlight one of the courses that Marina had mentioned, the communications course by Dr. Howard. Professor Howard, he was something else. He really, the point is, I think obviously you have to do the courses that you need to qualify for a major, obviously. So if it's finance, accounting, whatever that might be, you need to meet those basic criteria, but take advantage of the room that you have for electives to just challenge yourself a little bit, in the sense that in my case, I took up courses like sociology and psychology, which were supposedly board courses for everybody else, but ended up being the hardest for me because I was not as attuned to what was needed for those subjects. But it still helps in some way to broaden your horizons and just get that understanding. But in general, I think anything that helps to build up your communication skills is a very, very big plus. Because again, coming out of UTSC, pretty much everybody will have the academic accomplishments. But if you can distinguish yourself in any way, it's the hardest, to be honest, to do it just purely by academics. The best way to differentiate yourself is how you present yourself to somebody, and communication skills is the biggest part of that. So anything that can help you develop that communication skills, whether it's a course, whether it's club activities, anything that puts you on the spot. Again, it'll never be comfortable to put yourself on the spot, but that's what teaches you how to communicate more effectively when you're put in those situations. So personally, I was quite heavily engaged in various MESA activities in my first and second year, and then third and fourth year, I was actually on the organizing side of things. I was part of the organizing team within MESA, and we used to organize events for the student community, like I guess Jesse and Derek are here. So that's where it's another way to put yourself out there and get involved in the organizational side of things, because again, that's another aspect that will help you a lot when you get into the working world. You'll have to organize meetings, you'll have to host meetings, conduct meetings, things like that. So all of those things, I think, to summarize, the one point I'll emphasize is academics, no doubt, has to be a focus, but what can set you apart is your communication skills. So don't miss any opportunity to develop that aspect.
Very important. Thank you for that one. How about yourself, Timothy? Tell us about your academic experience in the extracurriculars.
Yeah, I guess I'm going off of what Shashir said in terms of, academics are important, but they're stage one. It's almost like knowing how to type or breathe. It's expected of you to have decent grades, but then just because you have a 4.0 doesn't mean you're guaranteed a job. And with that said, I actually didn't even study finance. I took one finance course during my time at UTSC, and I got a B- in it. With that said, most of my job was on the job learning. But it's not necessarily to say I took a bunch of random courses. I actually mostly studied corporate strategy and during my time at UTSC, and I was a TA for Professor Bouvard for many years. And with that said, echoing off of what the others have said, I studied that because I was very passionate about it. Even though I may not necessarily work in that field, I was able to kind of use my studies as to talk about something I was passionate about. Because at the end of the day, a lot of these employers for the different bank programs and the pension investment management companies, they want people who are passionate and have great communication skills, because they can teach you a lot of the stuff at the office. They can't teach you how to be a good communicator, how to put you in front of a client, how to put you in a meeting, and your boss to be able to trust you to put you in a meeting without them being present. Outside of the classroom, I wasn't really involved in any of the finance or even some of the business focused clubs. I focused a lot on student mentorship, and that was kind of something that me and my friends were very passionate about. So we started Mentors and Co-op. So essentially, we would pair up senior students with first year students, just kind of show them the ropes, how to write a resume, how to write a cover letter, and whatnot. And that's it. But then, going back to the start, grades are important, but then they're not going to guarantee you a good job. I'll use one example is if we have if there's two candidates, someone that has a 95% and another student has an 85%, 9 times out of 10, well, maybe don't put me on those stats, but then, the 85% student might have a more well-rounded personality just because of the fact that, they couldn't get the 95 because they were spent more time, allocating it to non-academic, and extracurricular activities. So, you really want to be a well-rounded candidate, because if these employers really wanted to hire robots, they would just build a machine. They're hiring people, and therefore it makes the human aspect more important. That's actually one more thing before I end this. Where in trading where I work, people always say, well, it's becoming more automated. Robots are going to take over, and I'm like, it's becoming more automated, but it's actually it's the inverse, because as the more mundane and low value tasks are automated, it actually makes humans and people more valuable in the world of trading and finance. because we're needed for more complex transactions. And that's kind of, and when we tell students this, it kind of blows their mind in the sense that, yeah, technology actually helps you. It allows you to focus on things that ensures more job security, because you really want to focus your entire day around stuff that can be automated by a robot. No, you want stuff that will never be automated by a robot, and therefore gives you more a more interesting career. That's it.
Thank you so much for that. So a lot of common themes, and I like what you said there, Tim. Well-roundedness, and I'm hearing that from all of our panelists here. Of it just wasn't the courses or just the business courses, right? There are other courses you took, other chances you tried. Again, the club activities, all that. So again, that whole do more than just like what Shashir said, lift your head from the desk. Do a little bit more, try some of the things. It's great. For the next couple of questions, and I'm aware of time here, so we're going to do the popcorn style, which basically means I'm not going to go in circles. This is if you want to talk about this, which is great. And actually, Tim, you led right into what the next question is what are the current trends you are seeing within your field? Now you talk about robotic and automations, but what are the trends that you're all kind of seeing? So again, we'll do this kind of more of a popcorn style. So feel free to answer as you wish on this, but what's going on? What's happening that you're seeing in the fields?
Well, I guess for the new graduates, on the age of automation, just having, you don't have to be like Facebook or like, Amazon level coding, just, familiarity with, basic object-oriented programming, being able to format things like, I need to open this file in Excel and copy and paste this specific table every day and paste it to another worksheet. And you want to be able to use VBA and be able to program that in a macro by just hitting a button. So, you don't need to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, but, just basic programming skills is what we look for in graduates. I think Python is the kind of latest programming language that the HR department's been looking for. And like I said, you don't need to be a programming wizard. You just need basic familiarity just to automate very simple stuff. And there's a lot of free stuff out there, but I'm sure Derek and the team in the career office, can point you in the right direction. So definitely don't be afraid to go to them. At the end of the day, you're paying for it through your fees, right?
This is true. Great, thank you. Anybody else? What trends are you seeing currently?
I guess I'll add something. I completely agree with Tim. I wish I took like one course or just even on the side of something related to programming. Super important, I think, regardless of where you go, because it also helps you stand out. And I think Excel is good. You definitely should learn a lot of Excel, but learning something puts you a little, like programming puts you a little bit more over the edge. And I think if people see that, they take a lot of value in that from a recruitment standpoint. But for me, I think actually what two main things that we've been seeing a lot is digital finance. And I know that like it varies, it's a scale. Here in North America and Europe, it's easy to pick up a phone and download an app or whatever. But in other parts of the world, digital finance is like still beginning, and that's why it's a little bit more of a trend. So we focus a lot on digital literacy, and in Myanmar there's no such thing as Google, it's only Facebook, and there's no such thing as the internet, it's just Facebook. So even things like how to download an app is stuff that we work on, and how to talk about security, financial security when you're using an app or downloading their mobile banking, plugging in a mobile wallet, all that kind of stuff. It sounds kind of simple when we talk about it here because this is just what life is now here, especially with COVID. But in developing countries, it's a huge thing, especially when you talk about remittances. And a lot of times people are sending cross-border remittances because they work in other countries and need to send money back home. So that's one thing that's become really big. And also this concept of blended finance. I think nowadays a lot of governments are trying to use public money in a different way, in a more creative way and innovative way, to instead of traditional aid and traditional overseas development aid, they're working with, they're developing a lot more development financial institutions and working with people like my organization or other large investment capital firms to kind of use public money in a more creative and private way, where it's kind of lending and you're still working towards development, but you're talking about a lot more innovative financing products, such as like loan guarantees, and I don't know, it's just a different way of thinking about traditional public funding.
Thank you. Anything to add about current trends that you're seeing before we move on?
One thing I can add quickly is just in general, whenever you want to identify new trends, just look for the companies which are growing the fastest in the sector, right? It's not your TDs and RBC that are growing the fastest. It's companies like Wealthsimple. Those are the names you see everywhere, right? In your TDC and things like that. Those are the names which are garnering attention because they're doing something new and doing it well. So, in financial management and investment management, it's all about artificial intelligence. It's about AI. It's about automating many of the portfolio management processes. You don't need a broker to be buying mutual funds for you when it can be done automatically through a platform. So, that's where some of the points both James and Tim mentioned, comes in. All of those are AI-based platforms. Firms like Questrade, Wealthsimple, those are the ones which are growing and exciting, right? So if you want to be on the cutting edge, look for those kind of companies and see where most of the hiring is happening, right? It doesn't mean that you may be qualified for them, but it will give you an inkling of what kind of skill sets they're looking for. Just browse through the job descriptions and see is it just finance knowledge that they're looking for, or are they looking for database programming background? So that will give you an inkling of what they're looking for, even if you need not be applying for them. But just look for them, and it'll help you identify the kind of trends people are looking for. Like the industry that I'm in, real estate, is a very, very slow-moving traditional industry, but even that's being hit by change, being hit by different kinds of new technology, and that changes hiring needs over the years. So even if just keep a very broad perspective when you look for job postings, just for interest, read stuff, even if it's not in your field directly, and even if you don't have what it takes for it.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Let's talk about designations. So I know both James and Sashir, James, you got your master's, I believe. Sashir, you got a few different designations there. Finance, I always get questions from students. Should I get my CFA? Should I get the master's? What do you think about that? So let's do a bit of an open panel. What about getting additional education on top of the bachelor's? What do you think?
Tim, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's well, I guess for full disclosure, I have nothing. But it helps, especially if you want to show employers that you're very interested in the field. It's one thing to say, I'm very passionate about finance, but it's another thing to say, I'll be writing the CFA level 1, or I've passed level 1 and I'm still in school. But then the common mistake I often find with students and recruits is they think just because you put CFA level 1 or level 2 candidate, that's all you need to get a job interview. It's not. I tell people, I'd rather students spend 300 hours networking with different people in the industry, practicing their interview skills, polishing their resume and their cover letter, and doing applications, as opposed to spending 300 hours only on the CFA or the different designations. They are important, but then it's almost like grades, where grades are important, but then they're not necessarily going to guarantee you a job. You still have to go out and interview and practice your job search skills. So they're important pieces of the puzzle, but please don't lose sight of the fact that you still need to be a well-rounded individual and put in time and effort to network and get to know people in the industry that you're actually applying for. So designations are a great first step.
Great. Okay. Any other additions to that?
I think I'll just supplement that. So it's right on, Tim. That's part of the you can put your head down and do your designations, but focus on the other stuff. But for the folks who are interested in pursuing a designation, it really depends on what area within finance you want to land into. That's what it really matters. The CFA designation definitely is very relevant if you want to do anything with portfolio management. So anything to do with investment markets and portfolio management, it's you can't go wrong with the CFA. It's a ton of work, no doubt, but a good thing is if you're already studying finance, for example, in school, the benefit is a lot of the material is already overlapping with what you're doing in your year 3 and year 4. So your level 1 of finance, you've almost covered off with your own coursework. So a bit of overlap there. But it's one of the most relevant designations that I've seen in the industry, for sure. Yeah, it has a lot of application to day-to-day work, for sure, which was surprising to me, because you get used to reading books and thinking, oh yeah, this is not going to be relevant 10 years from now. But the CFA is surprisingly quite relevant. The other designation I can speak to is an alternative investments designation, which is specifically for alternative asset classes. And to be honest, not as applicable as a CFA. It's more bookish, it's more theoretical. But again, it's a good way to show interest in alternative asset classes if you want to go there. And again, I'll come back to my qualifier at the beginning. It depends on where you want to land up. If you want to be on where Tim is, for example, on trading side, maybe a CFA is not as relevant. On the portfolio management side, it is. There are other parts of finance, like where Marina is, where James is, where again, it may not have that much utility. There are other things, there are other types of designations that may be suitable for you. So think much more about where you want to be. Don't just go for the letters because somebody told you.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you. As we're at time, one final question. What one piece of advice can you give to the students who are listening right now, how they can prepare themselves best for their success? And this again, popcorn.
Practice.
Right,
I would say practice. Practice your interview questions. People always ask me, well, what's the most important question in an interview when you're doing the finance interviews, which can span many rounds. I remember one of my interviews was 8 rounds, but in my opinion, the most important question is tell me about yourself. And that's mostly because it's usually the first question they ask you in an interview. And from what my experience and what I've heard is, a lot of the times with respect to impressions and the decision of whether or not to bump you up to the next round is done within the first 60 to 90 seconds. So that's usually around when you're answering, tell me about yourself / walk me through your resume. And so I definitely practice, that question like no tomorrow. Derek and everyone else in the career center and the co-op office, the resources are right there. They're there to help you. And, I remember it was a point almost in 3rd year where I was booking too many mock interviews. The co-op office had told me I had to relax. So I would say practice as much as you can. And also outside of practice interviews, go to as many intro sessions as you can. Go to as many of these, career nights, because the best way to learn about it is talking to people actually in the field.
Fantastic. Thank you. Anybody else? One piece of advice you can give to our students to help them with their future success. Marina, I see you want to talk there.
Yeah, adding on to Tim's point, I feel like practice is a big thing. Just knowing how to communicate and presenting yourself. I feel like confidence is a really, really big aspect. And the saying, like, fake it till you make it. Like, I feel like don't necessarily like fake it fully, but I feel like as long as you can convince them that you know what you're talking about and you're confident in that topic, they'll kind of see that light in you and they'll be like, okay, like I can put this person in front of clients, because if I believe them, then I'm sure my clients would believe them too. So I feel like that's a big piece of advice that I would pass on.
Great, thank you. Any other final advice for our students? James?
Sure, Shashir, you can go ahead if you want.
Go for it.
Okay, go.
Okay, mine's going to add on to everything. I think they're all valuable advice. My biggest advice is honestly to kind of broaden your horizons and take a little bit of a risk. I think that's kind of been my career path. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now if I didn't turn down a full-time job offer at a corporate company and work for an internship. And I've done, even after graduating, it feels like it's doing an internship after internship, or like a short-term contract after a short-term contract. But I just have to reminding myself that this is super early in my career. Everything is going to add up to something, and I'm willing to take risks and go to places and travel and pick up and leave wherever I go, because I have a certain goal in mind, I'm passionate about it, and it's tough sometimes because I also look at my cohort and colleagues or friends that I graduated with, and completely different paths and completely different points in life. A lot of people are settled in their jobs, been working there for 3-4 years, same roles. And I've taken completely different, and mine has been kind of a collection of different events, but wouldn't change it. I mentioned it before, it's everything adds up to something else. And I think you just have to be willing to push yourself to, go a little bit, just broaden your horizons and take that risk. And, something Shashir said earlier, you're not going to know whether you like it or not until you try it. And that was kind of what I focused on. One thing I would quickly add just on that previous comment about professional designations, I didn't get a professional, I did further education, and I think that's also an option. But one thing I would add is make sure it's something, obviously make it relevant, but something that's complementary, because if you're just kind of doing it, a lot of people do an MBA after doing a business degree, and I've just heard that you learn everything all over again. Like, you sure can communicate a little bit better, and you do a lot of case studies, but a lot of the theory you're learning again if you're already doing a BBA. So when I decided to do a further studies, it was really trying to find something that I was like, okay, this is something I lacked in my business degree that I kind of need to get to the next point, but it wasn't an overlap of studies. It was something a little bit different, and I think it worked well together.
Thank you, James. And Sashir, go ahead.
Yeah, last thing I'll add is I think just as a general point, I think everybody's given fantastic advice. One thing to keep in the back of your mind is don't take yourself too seriously. We, especially at that stage, we tend to think each decision is that life-altering decision, and each little thing that happens to us is the end of the world or the best. It's extreme. It's never the case. There's always multiple things that will happen down the road. Like, my first attempt at finding a job in the second summer I was in Toronto ended up with not getting a single job and me volunteering at the CNE. And even I got rejected even there from volunteer positions. I was like, nobody wants to hire me even when they're not paying me. So it's not as consequential as you think it is. So don't blow it up in your own head. Keep it in perspective, and when you get those opportunities for interviews, just be calm about it. If it's not happening, that's fine. More will come. If it's happening, it will happen. Just take a deep breath. How you convey the confidence that Marina was talking about is just be calm. The calmness is what conveys your confidence. Add your pauses to your speech. Don't rattle through your intros. Pause effectively. That's what will convey your confidence, and ultimately reduce the emphasis you have in your head about how much that matters. That's what will ultimately calm you down. So hopefully that helps.
That is awesome. Great note to end on, which we are at time, actually, everybody. So thank you so much. Right now in the chat, I've put in the contact information for the AUCC if you want to go ahead and do a booking for any of the services that we talked about tonight. It's up to the panelists. If you wish to put your LinkedIn or contact information in the chat as well for students to contact you, that's completely up to you. That's voluntary. But I just want to thank everyone. We are at time, and unfortunately, we didn't get to any of the questions that were put with the students earlier through their registration, but I think in the past 90 minutes, we've gotten a lot of great information out of the panelists. This has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us. 90 minutes goes quick with this type of discussion. What I really enjoyed about this was the variety. Everybody had a different story. And that's a funny thing, right? You say finance, although James is finance and other things. And that's what I like. It's finance and other things. It's not just one single title. It is a wide range of areas. And I think we heard a lot of great advice tonight about try different things, take a chance, talk to people, network. Don't just focus on one thing, but expand and try different things out. I like the don't take yourself too seriously, in the sense of, like, sometimes rejection happens, but that's part of growth. Sometimes you pick something that's not exactly you, but again, that's part of growth. And that's why we wanted to do these stories for all you to hear tonight, is just to hear the different pathways people have taken, and to let you realize that even though the past year has not been the greatest, people like Marina found work. Other people find work. And there is opportunities. There is life outside of UTSC. You see 4 people here that definitely do show that. And we just want to thank you for that, everybody. you're free to leave. I'll keep everything going for just another moment or so. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now.